The Russian port city of Novorossiysk, home to the Black Sea Fleet and critical oil infrastructure for Russia, was just rocked by explosions. A drone strike carried out by Ukraine damaged offices tied to one of Russia's most important oil pipelines. People on the ground were stunned, and Putin was scrambling to explain what went wrong. And now the world is left with one major question. Is Putin's war machine starting to crack under the pressure? The state of the war is changing, and it may not be in Russia's favor. We will also talk about what this means for American interests, global oil, and the future of deterrence against Russian aggression. Ukraine used both aerial drones and sea drones to directly hit Novorossiysk. And this wasn't a secret strike, it happened right in the middle of the day. Several buildings in the city center were damaged, including the Novorossiysk Hotel, about 1 mile from the port. Nearby infrastructure was also destroyed. Russian officials claimed that multiple people were killed and wounded as well. What we did know was that the office of the Caspian Pipeline Consortium took a major hit. This was the main operator of the pipeline that carried oil from Kazakhstan to the Russian Black Sea. To put it simply, this is a major strategy target for Ukraine, and they were successful. Russia's ability to export oil has been severely limited with this strike, and Putin's war machine is starting to crack. This was only the second time in the last couple of months that Ukrainian drones had gone after targets near the Caspian Pipeline Consortium. There were strikes reported earlier this year, but this strike hit right at the heart of Novorossiysk. To understand the importance of this, people should understand just how important this region is for Russia's energy production and exports. So, when Ukraine chose to hit Novorossiysk, it wasn't just a random target. It was symbolic and very strategic. The goal was to take out the core of Russian power projection in the region. Ukraine has adapted its war efforts, and with low-risk strikes, instead of simply defending territory, they are taking the fight deeper into Russian territory. Ukraine has been striking oil facilities, airfields, and ports. These are high-value targets that have recently forced Russia to spend money, spread out their own military defenses, and now Putin is worried about vulnerabilities inside Russian borders. For all of Putin's tough rhetoric, his military is actually struggling. The fact that Ukraine is repeatedly launching successful strikes against Russia, this tells us a lot about how the momentum of the war is, and the fact that it could be slipping away from Moscow. Russia still has significant firepower, but firepower isn't the same thing as control. What the Novorossiysk strike has shown us is that Russia cannot guarantee safety even in a city that is vital to its economy, with energy exports. This is a major blow to Putin's war plans, and it's quite embarrassing for the Kremlin. Ukrainian drones and missiles continue striking the Black Sea Fleet. Russia is now forced to move ships to the east, which has resulted in many of them stationing near Novorossiysk. And now, Ukraine has proven that everything in Novorossiysk isn't safe either. If Ukraine is able to keep finding the weak spots in Russia's defenses, Ukraine may actually start to have the upper hand after several grueling years of pain and suffering. Let's talk about what this means for the crippled Russian economy. The Caspian Pipeline Consortium was a major lifeline for Russia. It exported millions of barrels of crude oil, but it flowed through Russia's Black Sea coast. By damaging the facilities, the destruction likely won't just hurt Russia's economy, it'll hurt the international oil supply chain as well. And from the perspective of the United States, well, it's a major success. Allowing Russia to dominate global energy markets has allowed them to fund their own war, and has given them leverage over Europe and the world. As soon as the strike took place, President Trump suggested that Ukraine could actually win back large parts of its former territory. This is a dramatic shift from what we've heard from him in the past, but he's been clear, and he hopes to resolve the conflict very soon. Strikes like Novorossiysk prove why tactical targets matter. Every time a pipeline in Russia is hit, the momentum on the battlefield slowly moves in favor of Ukraine. So, while Ukraine's strike was a win against Russia, It was also an indicator that America needs to closely monitor its own interests as the situation develops in the Ukraine-Russia war. Now, while the strike was a significant blow to Russia's war efforts, Russia tried to downplay the damage as they always do, but the aftermath is undeniable. Russia has responded with more missile and drone attacks on Ukrainian cities. That is relatively common when they take a major hit. Putin is growing frustrated and has likely ordered large amounts of strikes in retaliation. But these strikes are not as tactical as the Ukrainian ones. They're made more out of rage than anything else. And these retaliatory strikes won't fix their problem. The longer the war drags on, the more it exposes Russia and makes them vulnerable. Ukraine will continue to target Russia's vulnerabilities, and cost-effective drone strikes have proven to be successful so far. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it'll work out forever. But if Ukraine can continue its momentum, it may actually be able to position itself well enough to force Putin into a settlement. That would be the ultimate goal for this pointless war. Putin would probably like to see that at this point, as well as Vladimir Zelensky. And we certainly know that President Trump has been fighting to end this conflict since his first day back. So, to summarize the strike, for Putin, this was another embarrassment. For Ukraine, it was another step towards leveling the battlefield and building momentum. And for the United States, it's hopefully one step closer towards ending the conflict entirely. But the ripple effects of the strike in Novorossiysk are only starting to be felt in Russia, and their war machine has many alternative plans and resources that can be relied upon. But Putin knows that time is running out, and his abilities are starting to be exposed as ineffective in some areas. Russia's ignorance and blind war efforts have caused them great suffering, and their economy is showing signs of weakness and potential recession. And while Putin has denied the idea of economic hardship, strikes like these tell us a very different story about what's happening on the battlefield. With the European Union starting to unite against Russia, and President Trump showing increased willingness to support Ukraine in order to suppress Russia's economy, it is now becoming clear for Putin that trouble is on the horizon. And while Russia remains determined to finish what it started by taking all of Ukraine, the real question is whether Putin will eventually realize that the objective of taking all of Ukraine is going to become hopeless if things continue to turn towards Ukraine. New strikes, sanctions, and a reunified EU poses a very real threat to Russia. The instability of their economy is already a major concern, and Putin has been analyzing the situation for a while now with his top advisors. Ukraine feels a bit more optimistic now about their chances in the final outcome of the war, despite a lingering tension from other allies. Trump still wants to see this conflict come to an end, because it's not really in the American best interest to have the fighting continue. But there is a rare earth mineral supply that the US would like to keep in the hands of Ukraine, so that it can benefit economically. He has gone so far as to suggest if Russia makes long-term peace, that they would also get a piece of the rare earth minerals that are in the Ukrainian territory. But for now, the Russian military resiliently fights onward, despite major setbacks in oil supply and production due to recent strikes. The ball is in Putin's court, and without a doubt, and only time will tell whether or not he makes the right decision for his own country.